Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Murphy and Chair of the Board of TCHC. Welcome to our board meeting, which we're holding through WebEx and live streaming on our own TV station. Well, okay, on YouTube. I want to, of course, begin with the land acknowledgement that we're on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I also want to note, sadly, the passing of Cheryl Duggan on August 28th, a THC tenant and a steadfast advocate for her neighbors and a longtime volunteer in the community, a beloved mother and grandmother. On behalf of the board colleagues, I want to extend sincere condolences to her family and gratitude for the time that we were able to spend with her and for the experiences she shared with us. She was a regular participant in our board meetings and proceedings, and her insight will be missed. I do want to note as well that our President Jag Sharma took place in an announcement last week to mark the completion of an important Tenant's first deliverable, which is the transfer of the scattered houses portfolio. At that event was Mayor John Tory, MP Ahmad Hussain, the Minister of Housing, our own very own Councillor Paula Fletcher, Councillor Brad Bradford, MP Julie DeBruzen, Alaya Abaya from the Circle Community Land Trust, Joshua Barnt from the Neighborhood Land Trust, and Heather McGregor of YWCA Toronto. And this, in addition to the successful launch of Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, the second completed of our Tenants First initiatives. This transfer is a true team effort involving collaboration with the city and Toronto community housing staff, allowing TCHC to strengthen its focus on its core functions and ensures that 760 units of housing will stay affordable in perpetuity, overseen by Circle Community Land Trust and Neighborhood Land Trust. The refurbishment and upkeep of these properties will be supported by the Government of Canada, who contributed nearly $90.2 million through the National Housing Co-Investment Fund, while the City of Toronto contributed over $8 million to the project. I also want to note, and you will see that we are joined by Kathy Birch, and I'm very happy to share that she's been, as chair and founder of our Path Committee, been recognized by the Government of Ontario for her work as a tireless advocate for accessibility. On December 6th, Kathy received the David C. Onley Award for Leadership in Accessibility, an award that commemorates the legacy of Ontario's 28th Lieutenant Governor by recognizing Ontarians who have gone above and beyond to improve accessibility for people with disabilities. Kathy and her colleagues on the RPATH Committee have worked closely with Toronto Community Housing to raise the bar for accessibility across our portfolio. For example, with her and the committee's support, the budget for accessibility modification has been increased from just $1.5 million in 2013 to over $20 million in 2022. And TCHC's own building standards for accessibility now exceed the requirements of the Ontario Building Code. Kathy, your positive impact on Toronto community housing is undeniable. On behalf of the board, I'd like to congratulate you for this well-deserved recognition and thank you for your ongoing efforts to improve the quality of life for people with disabilities. And by sharing your insight and experience, you continue to support TCHC in its commitment to being a leader in accessible housing. And on that note, I'd like to invite you to say just a few words as part of our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was certainly an honor to be with the Lieutenant Governor and David Onley for sure. But I need to make it really clear that if we had not had the open-mindedness of our executives, our frontline staff, and the willingness to do the right things, then none of this would have happened, nor would we have had the budgets that we've got now. So it's we're in our 10th year actually of advocating, and I think that's probably the longest tenant group that this corporation's had, other than for things like baseball and that, but as far as to get work really done. Um, and so I'm not going anywhere, although we are working with the city and we are expanding some. We're working on the build ratios with the city and the modular builds and that. And I'm going to still keep pushing. Um, we're not done. We're not where we need to be yet. And I'm kind of tenacious like that. So you'll continue to see me and you'll continue to hear me asking for things and trying to move this corporation forward. But I'm very proud of the work that we've done. And it's not just the RPath committee, it takes the whole team. And that's the benefit and why RPath works is because we do work as a whole team. We don't differentiate between staff and the committee. We're all trying to get a job done.
Great, thank you. And we would expect nothing else from you to continue to be pushing us. So thank you for that, and thank you for all you have done and will continue to do. And in that vein, I also want to, as we come to a close in this year, express my heartfelt gratitude to the staff at Toronto Community Housing. It continued to be another challenging year, but together you've achieved so much, and each of you is making a difference. Thanks to the efforts of staff all across the company, the TCHC is transforming itself into a new organization, and many of these, and we're excited by that as we come to our celebrate our 20th year. The work that staff do prepares the organization for the next 20 years of our history, ensuring we continue to provide homes and community to the people of Toronto. And over the holidays, I hope that all of our staff have the chance to reflect on that positive impact. And on behalf of the board, I wish you every success and health in 2023. So with that, I want to turn now to the rest of the agenda. We have our committee reports, update from the president, and strategic priorities report. And as we know, we've got our normal deputation process. We have received both written deputations, which have been provided to all the board, and we have some oral ones, which we will deal with. So now what I'll do first is canvass whether there's any conflict of interest by any member of the board. Seeing none, excellent. So then are there items the board wants to hold? And Darrell, what do we got?
At present, we're holding a number of items for deputations. They include item 5, 7A, 8A, 8A through E, and item 9.
Okay. And the board, does it want to hold anything of any other matters?
See, Mr. Campbell has his hand up.
Yeah, John, sorry, apologies. You're on mute, John.
Thank you. Is item 8C, has that been held?
We have
Yes.
a deputation on item 8C.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think everything in 8 is being held.
8, okay,
Except 8F.
okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other matter to be held? All right.
Oh, I
Can I
think
get
Chair Emery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought, sorry, I thought Brian had his hand up as well, but 11. I just have a question on number 11.
okay. And Brian, I think that green thing is a hand, so.
Mine was just to move the rest of the agenda.
Oh, okay. All right. So moved. Seconder? Adele? All in favor? Carried. Thank you so much. All right. So now we go to, what are we going to now?
The first item about which we had a deputant would be item 5. And I believe that Ms. Wilkinson, who's asked to depute in relation to that matter, is on the line.
Okay. That's the business arising matter.
It is.
Okay.
Ms. Wilkinson, can you hear us?
I can.
We can hear you.
Good afternoon, or it's still good morning, I guess, and I wanted to welcome our new city councilors to the board. You will have the time of your life. As a former board director, I can almost guarantee that. There's never a dull year or a dull moment. There'll be lots of challenges ahead. So I just want to be clear, I'm deputing on the action item list because there's an item missing. So I don't want staff to interrupt me and tell me it's not on the list. I know it's not on the list. I am deputing to put something on the list. So if we got that clear, and the item that I believe is missing on this action item list is regarding the Ontario Trillium benefit, where the energy and property tax credit regarding the capital facilities agreement between Toronto Community Housing and the City of Toronto, which took place in 2012. This affected some 50,000 tenants, and tenants were not informed of the agreement or how it would affect them. And as a result, the tenants continued to claim the property tax credit for the next 10 years until CRA notified these tenants they would be required to repay the property tax portion of the OTB as they were no longer entitled to it. So what happened to our tenants was avoidable and unconscionable. This issue has imposed an undue financial burden on our tenants, as you know, who are struggling to repay CRA in addition to their regular living expenses. Now, management provided a board report in April 22 on this issue. So I'll just remind you that's like 8 months ago, indicating the actions they had taken, letters they had written, working with other stakeholders, as did Mayor John Tory, wrote to the ministers, etc. And now everyone's sitting back apparently and waiting for a response. So it's been a busy year. I understand there was a provincial election followed by a municipal election, but the good news for us is the ministers and MPPs that were responsible for this portfolio are still there or were re-elected. So there's been no further communications on this important tenant issue. And I bring it up now because tax time is quickly approaching. Some T4s will be available online, and many for the seniors will be mailed out. So here we are again, a second tax time, and this dark cloud is still hanging over the heads of our tenants who are in limbo, waiting to see how the landlord will address this issue on their behalf. So from a tenant's perspective, the landlord and mayor had some phone conversations, sent some letters, and they're waiting for an answer. You know, there's no shortage of angry tenants whose lives have been adversely affected by this decision, and they want this debt to be waived. And I know that Toronto Community Housing feels the same way. So I would ask the board to consider putting this issue on the action item list to ensure it remains top of mind with the board of directors as it is with tenants until this matter has been resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from directors on that? I think we have a okay. I do think we are. We don't really have anything to report. I think the CRA is unfortunately proceeding, and I gather, Jag, that they are they're dealing with individual taxpayers about, and because of the way they operate, we don't know anything about that.
Through you, Chair Murphy, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, so thank you. All right, so we can get I guess we have to move a motion to pass the, or do we?
Motion to receive.
Motion to receive number 5. Dell, seconded by Brian, all in favor, carried. Okay, next item was 8.
7A.
Oh, sorry, 7A, correct.
7A, and I believe that Ms. Birch was intending to depute in relation to that matter. Ms. Birch, are you on the line?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So this is about the board schedule. Several of us that depute regularly met with Dara a couple of times, and about the fact that there's only going to be 6 board meetings in 2023, and that it's insufficient for the amount of work that needs to go on, and that for the board agendas, like today we have 14 items, and to get done in 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours. However, it's the tenants' voices that get squashed, because what happens is, in order to make up time, we get, instead of getting to depute for 5 minutes, we only get to depute for 3 minutes. So therefore, it is inadequate time. You're not giving your tenants enough voice when you're not providing for enough. And while I understand that our counselors, everybody's got very busy schedules, you still have, you signed up to do the work. You need to make sure there's enough time for it. And I really am not pleased to see that. I mean, at one point, not that long ago, we had board meetings that were almost every month. And then it got reduced, and now it seems to continue on.
Any comments from, thank you. Any comments or questions from a board member? Brian?
I thought we were still using the full 5 minutes. No, is that not correct?
We are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all deputants have
Today.
5 minutes.
No, it's
So-
never been 3.
I mean,
No, that's not true.
It's
Well-
never been, I've been on the board 3.5 years, and it's been 5 minutes all the whole time I've been on.
So, but I mean, we're not, there's no plan to reduce it. So at least that's been discussed. So-
For what it's worth, there was in fact a proposal that that the board might in certain circumstances reduce deputation time. We, as Ms. Birch indicates, we consulted with tenants. I think the board heard from the deputants that that was not an acceptable proposal. And so we haven't moved forward with that proposal. The deputation time remains 5 minutes, and there's no plan to reduce it.
One of the other challenges that we have in setting board meetings is obviously the workload that city council members have, and trying to work around that. And there are many requirements and obligations that they have. So, so I think it's challenging just to find 6 times we can meet, plus all the committees. So I think we just need to monitor that as we move forward, and have special board meetings when necessary over and above the 6. But I don't think we can.
And we always have, Brian. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a year where we've had fewer than 8.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, there is another deputant in relation to this matter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Ms. Wilkinson, I believe, is on the line.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to clarify, I'm pretty sure Kathy was referring to the number of meetings scheduled, not the amount of talk time for deputants. Just putting that out there. So some of you will be leaving the board next year, and I think Kathy touched on it well. For those of you who have been attending these meetings during your term, I encourage you to think back and remember the lengthy agendas like today's and the meetings you have had during your term, and how many times members had to play beat the clock to get through agendas before quorum was lost. You're agreeing to a schedule that will serve incoming board members if you are leaving the board, so it's important to consider them as well. So I wanted to talk about the language used in the scheduling of the meetings. Specifically, it says scheduling takes into consideration the board annual work plan as well as religious and other holidays. And the last part, that the City of Toronto has designated as days of cultural or religious significance. At the Governance Committee, where this item was approved and forwarded to the board, the language was more inclusive. It read that may be celebrated by board members and members of the public who wish to attend TCHC meetings. And I'm going to recommend that management use that all-inclusive language that was approved at the Governance Committee. And you'll understand why in a minute. So Toronto Community Housing has many employees, tenants, and stakeholders who participate or observe in these meetings. I would expect that Toronto Community Housing would take their specific stakeholders' needs into consideration whether City Hall acknowledges these dates or not. So, for instance, 2 of the proposed meeting dates occur on Jewish days of religious significance. The first one is March 6th, which is Purim, and the second one is December 7th, which is Hanukkah. The city has it wrong on their calendar if they'd like to fix it. And the City of Toronto has not scheduled any meetings on those dates, whether they acknowledge them or not. I would suggest those 2 meeting dates be moved to respect people of Jewish faith. The second piece to my deputation is regarding the ways in which our tenants participate and have participated in the board during COVID. And I know that during COVID, the City of Toronto held virtual public meetings and received teleconference deputations from stakeholders, as in their case, they may have 50 or more deputations, and it was very difficult to accommodate them. And while Toronto Housing adopted this practice, and this has gone on for 2.5 years, this has led to our tenants feeling they are being discriminated against. Unlike the city, you've got 3 people calling in. There have been multiple requests by these tenants and even board members who supported accommodating tenant participation in virtual meetings. In other words, tenants should be seen and heard. There are various ways in which tenants and stakeholders can participate, and I know staff are exploring them. But the duty to accommodate is not provided at your convenience in accordance with the Ontario Human Rights Code. It would be embarrassing for the corporation if tenants filed a human rights claim against them. The board may wish to consider passing a motion requesting management give tenants the option to participate in the same way as other meeting participants in virtual board and committee meetings starting in January 2023. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Does any board member have a question or comment?
Just a clarification, Kathy, are you meaning in-person meetings?
No, I mean, remember, Brian, you had said there's no reason why tenants can't participate in the WebEx meeting. So as Kathy Birch was just online for a moment, we were acknowledging her reward, but we disconnected her when it came time to deputation. So then she goes back to the phone. She's not allowed to actively be in the WebEx meeting. And there's no reason to exclude 3 or 4 tenants that are calling in. And the board has sanctioned for management to accommodate them, and it still hasn't happened. So I'm just trying to move the board to make sure that tenants are not discriminated against and that they be permitted to participate in the same way as you in the new year.
So through the chair, I can advise, as Ms. Wilkinson's noted, that we have been looking at this issue, and I expect that you will see that change implemented in January. We've picked up some equipment that we anticipate will assist to conduct hybrid meetings, and as well, we will be taking a slightly different approach using the existing WebEx platform as to how we schedule meetings in the new year in a manner that will facilitate tenants in all of the board's meetings and meetings of its committees participating in the meeting for the purpose of their deputation in the same manner that board members and staff participate, that they are, if they want the opportunity to do so, both heard and seen.
That's good.
I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So anything else that just the 2 on 5, Darren?
That's correct. Yes, and I will say in relation to Ms. Birch's comment about the need for more frequent meetings, and I know that that is an issue that we heard from tenants in the past. One of the changes that we implemented in April of last year when we adopted some minor modifications to the rules of procedure was to eliminate the consent agenda, which was intended to actually speed the meeting, but we found, I think, that it had the opposite effect, and to request directors to hold matters on the agenda that weren't part of the consent agenda, weren't part of the meeting or that they wanted to have further discussion about, rather than adopting them at the beginning of the meeting if they didn't have various issues to address. We're finding that that does in fact have an impact on the length of our meetings, that it does make us more efficient in terms of the meetings, and that we're able to get through the public meetings effectively within the time allotted. So yeah, we have big agendas. I think those changes, given time to grow, will continue to have a positive effect on the manner in which we go through meetings. The other issue that I did want to flag, just as we are, and I think this is an issue, Mr. Chair, that we flagged for you yesterday. Councillor Cheng and Councillor Crisanti are now part of the board. We've heard from both councillors as to their preference in terms of committee assignments, and given that the next board meeting, if the board adopts the meeting schedule that's proposed, won't be until February. There is the opportunity, should the board wish to exercise it today, to affect those appointments as part of this matter. Councillor Cheng has indicated an interest in being a member of the Governance Committee and the Tenant Services Committee. Councillor Crisanti has indicated an interest in being a member of BIFAC and the Governance Committee. We can accommodate both of those interests with the board's permission.
I'm always happy to accommodate the interests of representatives of our shareholder.
I'd be glad to move that.
Adele, second.
And so we'll
Yeah.
slightly modified motion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, and that's Councillor Chen, Councillor Crisanti, is that I don't mean to speak for you, but that's acceptable to you, those assignments? Yeah. Okay, great. So all in favor?
Yes, sorry, I just unmuted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Welcome.
Okay. Yes, welcome. Thank you. All right. Where are we at now? 7?
The next item
No, 8A?
8A, A through C, Ms. Wilkinson wanted to depute on those items as well.
Did you have any, John, do you have any framing for any of your items first you want to speak to, or are you okay?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right.
Ms. Wilkinson?
Yes, thank you, Dara, and I just want to remind you the board did not indicate a preference to change the 2 meeting dates that are scheduled on days of religious significance to people of Jewish faith, including your employees, and I really think that's important to the corporation to observe that. So, moving on, I wanted to just depute in a general way about the OACH items, so I'm not, hand-picking them. So, I wanted to comment on OACH. I wanted to recognize the interim commissioner, Summer Nudell, and Nadia Gouveia, interim COO, who responded to rapid-fire questions from the committee members at the Tenant Services Committee. And Toronto Community Housing recognizes the contributions OACH has made to better serving our tenants, and will work with them to identify and implement staff training needs to achieve better outcomes. And I also wanted to touch on the terms of reference document to remind staff that OACH is an independent accountability office that reports directly to this board. Creation or revision of this terms of reference document should include the commissioner, the chair of the Tenant Services Committee or their designate, and a legal representative. And previously, it included a representative from SSAH. The Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation changes occurred some time ago and were implemented and are now just being incorporated into the terms of reference. This change involves increased workload for the commissioner, the senior advisor, her admin staff, and other staff members. Following that, Toronto Community Housing asked OACH to take on all tenant files in arrears, and OACH agreed. This was later rescinded, as there are only 6 EROs at staff that do this unique work, and they could not keep up with the hundreds of files that were coming their way. So I just want to remind everyone, when you're proposing changes, that, when the corporation wants to propose changes to this terms of reference, they really need to consider increased workload so that the board, before agreeing to sign on or asking OACH to participate, make sure that OACH is properly staffed to keep up with the increased workload. When files increased to OACH, and there was hundreds of files, the solution was not to hire additional staff to reduce arrears, it was to reduce the number of file referrals to OACH. And that just doesn't make sense. These arrears files will now sit in limbo until they make their way through the system back to OACH. There is risk of burning out the OACH employees who go above and beyond helping tenants, and when that happens, we risk losing incredible staff. And in the last year, though, I am encouraged because I see the results of management now proactively working with the Commissioner of Housing Equity to identify areas of improvement, problem solving together, and Toronto Community Housing seeking out the Commissioner's expertise on your unique or high-risk cases. 25 million in arrears does not bode well for the Toronto Community Housing's reputation. It will take years to reduce this number, while new files are added to it. What we have been doing, we know, it's just not working fast enough to see measurable results. So I think as an organization, we need to set some targets and achieve them. So next year, perhaps new strategies need to be considered beyond passing files back and forth, perhaps brainstorming with other social housing providers and stakeholder groups to consider alternative ways to tackle the arrears beyond the current arrears collections process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, anyone else on 8A?
Sorry, I did, are we going to discuss as a board these items or?
Yeah, no, we have to, yeah, because we haven't passed it yet. So that's why I was asking whether there's any more deputants on 8A.
Okay, so I'll wait to
no.
see if there's more deputants.
There are not.
No? Okay, now we can talk about 8A. And but is there any on 8A, B, or C?
Well, Ms. Wilkinson asked to speak in relation to all of 3 items, and I understood that what she just said was her
Correct.
deputation
That's
in
my
relation to those
understanding
3
too.
items.
That's my understanding too. Is there any other deputant on any of
There are
these?
not.
Okay, so we'll deal with the OACH items, I think, all together, just because it's easier. So Adele.
I did have a couple of questions about the terms of reference. It still talks about quarterly reports. I understood that they're just biannual now. And I was just curious, does OACH actually present a separate budget to the board? Have I missed that?
Through the chair, I believe, and if Raymond's on, if he can confirm, but I believe that the budget is submitted and rolled up into the overall budget consideration. I'm not sure that it is presented separately. Raymond?
It is not presented separately. However, OACH's budget is in the overall TCHC budget.
Sorry, that was one question. You had another one, Adele?
Yeah, I also had a question about incorporating TCHC. I know that there is one reference to them in section 1, but is that all the incorporation that we have to do for seniors housing as far as the terms of reference and OACH responding to that board as well?
So the intention was to address through that one simple change, the manner in which OACH would serve in that fashion for both community housing and seniors housing. There is a separate agreement between TCHC, seniors housing, and the commissioner that goes into greater detail in relation to the manner in which the commissioner serves that function. But all that TCHC is doing within the context of its jurisdiction is agreeing to the direction from the city. that the commissioner would serve in that capacity. The nature of the relationship that the commissioner then has with the Seniors Housing Corporation
Is separate.
is separate and is an interaction that is governed by her, the dealings with the Seniors Housing Board. So the board and the commissioner will have a similar relationship as the commissioner does with this board.
Okay. And it doesn't need to be included in these terms of reference. Okay. I do think that given the different relationship that OACH has with the board, that maybe a separate budget, even though it does end up getting rolled into TCHC, is worth seeing.
Should at least be a line item, its own line
Yeah,
item, right?
because we don't
In the
we don't
report to
see
the board.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with
Even
that.
if it's a slide or something, but
Yeah.
I do think it should be separate. And I do have a comment on the terms or the work plan. I'm hoping that the KPIs can be more specific. It's not just reporting on trends, that there are actually goals when it comes to improvement in arrears, payment plans, and the success of payment plans, and, providing training materials. To me, it's about who is actually participating successfully in the training, not just that the materials are being handed to TCHC. And I know that the relationship with, OACH and TCHC management has changed. And I do hope that we can take advantage of that, but that they're actually concrete so that we can see if it's percentages or numbers or whatever. So I find this work plan to be quite general and very hard for us to measure the response. And I had a question. I know that one of the reports, I think it's C, talks about TCHC's utilization of lien to deal with arrears. And I'd like to think that OACH is part of that the two are being coordinated. And that's not clear to me in your work plan that you're benefiting from what TCHC is doing and that you're working together on this. I hope that's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Summer?
Thank you. And through the chair, I can take the work plan away and work on it with more specific measurable goals if that would be preferable. I'm happy to do that.
I think the way to think about it is instead of process goals, outcome goals.
Yes. And I think we've been dealing with these process goals as long as I've been on the board, which is almost 4 years now. And I would like to see that we get to some outcomes. And I do appreciate that there's been pushback in prior years from TCHC management. But as I said, I think that is changing. And I would like to understand the relationship with what TCHC is doing with its lean approach and how OACH is coordinated with that.
Chair, or sorry, through you, Chair Murphy,
Yeah.
what I can confirm, and I believe Nadia is on, but is our lean review is focused on the findings that we have through OACH. So we're absolutely connected with what the process changes would be doing to affect the output, and that is our absolute intent, is to be outcomes focused as far as responding to the findings of OACH.
And I think that should be a priority for OACH in the work plan, and it's not referenced.
And for you, Chair Murphy, I can confirm that Summer and I believe one member of her team have already participated in one of our Kaizen sessions. And I think we learned quite a bit, both from Summer and her team, but also Summer learned quite a bit from us. And so we continue to work closely to ensure that we're addressing some of the concerns they've had and also some of our priorities in terms of addressing our arrears.
So I just hope the work plan can be updated because I think it's very similar to prior years' work plans. It just seems to get
I admit I did
recycled.
refer back to prior work plans. I will take it away and resubmit.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Any other? Yeah, I have John and then Brian.
Dara, maybe you could, at the Tenant Services Committee, we talked a little bit about the terms of reference and the types of files that the OACH was being asked to work on, and that included all files in arrears, and that staff was going to re-examine that assignment, and that there may be changes that will be recommended shortly.
So I can just, I think it is addressed, but perhaps not as clearly in the report. That, and I think Ms. Wilkinson, I flagged that in her deputation as well. This is the decision to expand the ask of the commissioner, not just to look at vulnerable tenancies, but to look at all tenancies in arrears. And as I understand it, part of the work that is continuing between the commissioner and the commissioner's office and operations staff is to determine how that gets implemented. And I think that is a matter that, with the benefit of those further discussions, we would propose to bring back to the board at a future date, either with amendments to the terms of reference, or frankly other alternatives that might be considered on as to how that ask of the board gets addressed.
So we've never, and when do you anticipate though, because we haven't really had a fulsome discussion about what should the duties of OACH be, at this point in time. Those expanded responsibilities were recommended and we accepted them, but now, months later, we know the implications of that. And so do you expect that we'll have a fulsome discussion on that when the recommendation comes back?
So I hate to put people on the spot, but I think I would look to Ms. Nadell and Ms. Gavea for their advice as to when we might be, because I think the intention was to try and have the discussions about what this looks like from an implementation perspective, and then bring something back. I would think, I think that the timing of that return is informed by those conversations, and I'm not sure how they're proceeding.
So through you, Chair Murphy, maybe I can comment and then some of you can jump in. We're still working on a couple of different approaches to see if we can address the increased workload to OACH's team through different approaches, and we haven't quite finalized the implementation of those suggested approaches, including a checklist. Summer and team have offered to provide a sort of a drop-in model where staff can come and triage cases with the team directly. So there's a few different opportunities. I would say it would take us at least another 2 to 3 months. And Summer, maybe you have a different timeline, but I think we would need to pilot those different approaches before we can make a recommendation on the scope.
Okay, so I've got, just to check in, I've got Brian, I think Marcel had his hand up as well, and Paula.
Yeah,
Nope,
I got mine up.
Marcel,
Thanks,
okay.
Tim.
Okay, so hang on, Paula. I got Brian first,
Yep.
but I just wanted to check. I assume what you'd do then, though, is when you're ready, you'd go back to the TSC committee on the way to the board. So you'll keep them. Okay, great. So you keep John informed. All right, so I have Brian, then Paula.
I thought we had discussed that we were wanting the commissioner and the staff there to look at more strategic issues so that we could improve our own systems rather than passing work over to them, which really I don't think may solve a problem, but for them to use their skills in looking at the ones they're looking at to help us improve our systems so that, it's not just a question of things being forwarded. It's actually improvement, ongoing improvement for our processes. So I don't see that embedded in here.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm going to improve that work plan. I promise you. And the work that I'm doing with Nadia and operations is to shift the responsibility back to the regions to resolve more arrears files so as not to require an OACH intervention. And the OACH team is prepared to support that transition and support operations staff so that they can build their capacity to do that work and eliminate a lot of the need for OACH interference in so many files. And it's my hope that that is how we can continue to serve the whole family portfolio because there just won't be as many that require such specialized intervention.
Great.
Thank you.
Paula?
Yeah, I just wanted to review a few things because we have new people. One, the OACH is actually an employee oversight by the board. It's not an employee, the OACH is not, and the department is not of TCHC. It's basically an oversight body to assist in evictions, to ensure that we don't have, I'll call them evictions for non-payment of rent that where somebody could have had a repayment plan. And as part of our oversight, we need to require management to be efficient with their processes so the OACH isn't doing all the arrears work. I direct that, Jag, I think that would be the role. It's not an ombudsman, but it has the same oversight role because it's a board-directed employee and division, not a staff-directed one. And I think there's too many times where we stray into this being a TCH staff person rather than a board oversight division or department. And our job is to make sure that the recommendations that we're getting from OACH, that management is implementing them. That's the role of the OACH, not to be a place where you just send everything just send everything to have it done. So I just want to clarify, that's my understanding. Jag, I'd like you to clarify that's your understanding. So is that your understanding?
Through you, Chair Murphy, absolutely. And that's the end that we're working towards is, and similar to some of the challenges we had from an internal audit perspective, and similar to what the board had referred to earlier as being outcomes based. So absolutely agree.
So this is the terms of reference will be developed. So they're the board's terms of reference, not the staff term. I think we have to be really clear. I can see we drift. It drifts back and forth. So one of the exercises here is to be really clear on what everybody's role is. And John, as the tenant services person, chair of that committee, I think that you hold those reins. I can call them reins.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, so can I get a motion? So I guess the terms of, sorry, the work plan document you're going to take back. So we don't need to approve that. Terms
Mr.
of
Chair.
reference. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but it was mentioned, I think, earlier by Adele, and it was some change that we had asked for, and that the OACH report out not quarterly but semi-annually to the Tenant Services Committee and the board. And so that's on page 101, and that change will need to be made.
Okay.
We'll make that change, but sorry, let me just.
That's in the terms of reference. So 8A, we don't need to deal with. It's going back to, it'll be going back to your committee, John. 8B, need a motion to advance that. John, I guess you can move.
Yeah.
Adele's second, subject to the amendment that needs to be made to reflect the reporting.
I've just added as amended to reflect semi-annual reporting, and we can clean it up later.
Yeah,
but
catch
I
it
think
up.
That's
Yeah.
the intention.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Anything in we just H8C is just for information. So we just a motion to receive, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Adele, seconded by John, all in favor, carried. Anyone on, so 8D.
We have a deputant.
Okay.
We do. Mr. Avila has asked a depute in relation to that matter. Mr. Avila, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you?
Okay, you have 5 minutes for your deputation.
So, with indulge of the board, I will be speaking on item AD and AE. The reason is because CSU and police play an important role in the internal transfer process recommended by the city ombudsman. And as you know, your CSU officers are agents of the landlord during off hours of office time and on the weekends. So two things I want to highlight on the report is that there has been some improvements on the way TCHC CSU officers communicate with Toronto police officers with regards taking reports. It has to be processed in a different alternative manner to address confidential information, which is good. Because I didn't have this opportunity when my e-bike was from my girlfriend and myself were stolen from 220 Oak Street. So this is great news. Last time I had an opportunity to speak the Tenant Services Committee in relation to the underhouse and overhouse situation. And I want to remind the board since 2012, activists have been telling TCHC that there are solutions for this problem that will simplify the life of your TCHC residents. One of them is called the SWAP unit. That is was done before when the amalgamation of TCHC. I believe city homes allow overhouse tenants. So someone who lives in a 3-bedroom unit all by themselves, and then able to find a single unit, they were able to transfer and switch units when someone who has a situation where they're under house and they need 2 or 3 bedroom for the growing family. So those alternatives are also applied in the UK, I believe. And that has been an option available for residents. So I want to understand if in 2023, moving forward, because this situation is not acceptable, where tenants have to go through a process that is so inconvenient, especially when we are talking the rezoning of phases 4 and 5 in Region Park. Currently, we are discussing the upcoming rezoning. And we want to find solutions for our youth who are being displaced by people who are coming out of town to live in the condos. Currently, the ratio is 25% TCHC units compared to 75% of condominium units. So you see the difference. Our youth do not have a chance to compete against us. So we believe that one of the alternatives can be found as rent to own. That will be a great alternative so that our youth can stay and rent and pay for the home. And the other alternative, as I mentioned already, is to swap units that will alleviate the congested backlog of transfers between underhouse and overhouse. That is a solution that you should be incorporating in this report for the internal transfer unit. That is my recommendation to the board to facilitate changes that will help everybody. And at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation. So that is my deputation for today. I want to thank. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead. You still have time. Apologies by me.
I want to thank you for acknowledging my sister Cheryl Dugan, TCHC resident, whose voice is going to be missing from this board. And I want to wish you guys happy holidays and happy New Year 2023. That is all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And same to you. Any comments or questions from board members? Okay. Thank you. So is that both 8D and 8E? Is there any other delegations?
Yes, Ms. Wilkinson wanted to depute in relation to item 8E only. I don't know if the board wants to deal with 8D first or deal with both matters at the same time.
Let's deal 8D. Any board member want to discuss 8D? John.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, could I just get an update on the CSU complement and where we stand to this point of the year in terms of turnover and vacancies?
Now over to you, Jag, or Natty.
Through your chair, Murphy, if I could refer to Nadia.
I was going to actually refer it to Al Britton, who is Senior Director of the Community Safety Unit, to speak to that item.
Yes, through you, Chair. The CSU current staffing, we're authorized for 173 special constables. We've recently had several resignations to go to police services. We're now currently at 135. So we're 38 vacancies that we definitely have a recruiting plan, and we have a training plan set up for 2023 to address that.
And with those vacancies, what is it, 38 vacancies? When are your next class? What is the size, and when are your next classes graduating?
We have a class currently in the classroom now, and that is 8 staff members that will be going out to the field as of Monday. They'll continue their training and be out on their own within about 6 weeks after their coach officer training. The next class that we'll be hiring will be in January, and we're targeting 16 individuals at that point.
And when we spoke about this at the Tenant Services Committee, we mentioned that there was a problem in getting police checks done, and that we could not hire and train prospective officers while they're awaiting the result of their police check, but that the police check times, which was a change, and that the police check times to complete the task had become, sort of inordinately long. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yes, Director Campbell. The previously CSU, we were hiring staff where they complete their internal background check with through housing, but there's a more in-depth one that's completed by the Toronto Police Service. That background check can take anywhere from 30 to about 150 days, depending on their workload. Because our staff are lumped into the team with Toronto Transit Commission, the City of Toronto Special Constables, Toronto Police Officers. All the background checks are done through the Talent Acquisition Office of Toronto Police. In September of last year, a direction was provided to us that the background checks had to be completed prior to hiring the staff. Previous to that, we were able to bring them in with a clause in their contract that if they failed their background check, they would be terminated. As of September of last year, we now have to make sure those checks are completed before they're hired. And that's created a delay for us where some of the classes have been very small because we didn't receive enough people passing prior to the class starting.
So is it safe to say that as a result of this bureaucratic change, and that we're not allowed to start training prospective officers until they've passed the background check, that means there's fewer community safety officers out in the field, and community safety is compromised?
I would definitely say we have diligent staff in the field that do their best to ensure community safety is at the highest level at all times, and we work closely with Toronto Police. I would definitely say additional staff would assist us in doing more in the community, more proactive work. So yes, I would say that we are hindered by the delayed in the background checks, and we're working closely with Toronto Police to find a resolution.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. I believe we have a city councillor that's on the Toronto Police Services Board. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, we may have 2 councillors that are on the Police Services Board. And so, maybe we'll be able to find a way to get that sorted out.
Wow, that is some awesome special pleading, John. I am impressed. You must have been in politics before.
No, never.
All right, any other comments on 8D?
I did have a comment. It's Councillor Crescenti here. And
yeah, please proceed.
Yeah, and so just to John's point, I mean, I can have a look and see who these 2 councillors are that are on the Toronto Police Services Board, and that I'd be interested to know. But on the point of the special constables and that seems like a significant number of special constables that you've lost over the years. And are they being assigned regionally? So they're assigned specifically, particularly in priority neighborhoods, where they're there all the time and the community gets to know who these special constables are, and vice versa. They get to know the community, much like, you know, community policing programs across the city that we're making every effort to try and implement on a more regular, in a more regular way. How are they assigned, and are they assigned in the way that I described?
Yes, through the chair, Director. We have two different deployment models, and one is a static deployment through the violence reduction program, where communities were identified that required additional security and support. And that's through our community safety and support pillar. We provide the community safety officers, and there's a lot of support through Liqua's team from the partnership side. In regards to the mobile response, we're assigned throughout the city based on districts. We have 3 different districts in the similar to the regions that we have: central, east, and west. And in there, each officer is assigned one community for a significant period of time. It's usually well over a year, and in many cases, it's been 5+ years. And those individuals get to know the staff, the people, the staff, and the communities themselves, and the unique aspects of each community. They also participate in the hub. Integrated hub meetings in those communities, so they know many of the issues going on from a safety and security and from an administrative side. In regards to the 38 vacancies, about 3 years ago, CSU expanded significantly with the violence reduction program, and that was up to 60 additional staff members. Our hiring has not ever been able to achieve that, so 38 does sound quite significant, but from 2019 to now, we're up about 20 staff, 20 special constables. But again, we still aspire to be fully staffed through a proper hiring year next year.
Well, it's encouraging to hear that they're assigned in different neighborhoods up to 5 years, because I could tell you when I was elected for my second round in 2010, I know that we were doing that actively. There were regular constables assigned to different neighborhoods, particularly in the Etobicoke North Ward 1 that I represented, and I got to know them quite well. They got to know everybody, and everybody knew them. They were part of the community, and that really went a long way in terms of mitigating any issues and crime issues, and assisting the community in any problems they had. So I would encourage that continued approach, and wherever possible. And on the, so you got 8 that are going to be graduating. So what's a 5-year plan? Do you think you'll have that gap filled in the next 3 to 5 years, or sooner, preferably?
Yes, through the chair, Councillor, we do plan on actually recruiting enough staff within the next year to 2. And the reason we're never going to be exactly on point because we do lose staff through attrition. So it's a moving target, but we will definitely be very close to it. And our goal is to be up to par prior to a person leaving through a resignation or a retirement. But yes, our plan is definitely this year that we would be able to hire enough. We're in the process, obviously, of many retention strategies as well, because that has been our source. We have hired quite a few, but unfortunately, we've lost several through attrition. So we are working very hard to have that complement up to the proper number, or very close to it, within the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much. As I indicated earlier, I do have to jump off. So it was great to see everybody again and be part of this committee. And I don't know if I don't think we have another meeting before the end of the year, but I want to wish everybody well for this, coming holiday and Christmas, and please enjoy, and we'll see you on the next round. And I think I have a briefing coming up with Jay, right? Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other directors on 8D? All right. Can I get a motion? We're approving or receiving?
Receiving.
Receiving. John, seconded. Nick, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. So we have deputants in 8E.
Ms. Wilkinson has asked to depute in relation to that matter.
Okay.
Ms. Wilkinson, can you hear us?
Yep.
You can begin your deputation.
You can hear me?
We can.
Okay. So I actually deputed on this item at the Tenant Services Committee regarding this briefing note. It's very articulate and it addresses the top 3 transfer categories criteria. However, the program actually has 5 categories. 2 are not covered in this report. The 4th would be the overhoused category, where tenants are overhoused by a number of bedrooms. For example, 1 person living in a 3-bedroom. And the 5th category is where tenants are underhoused, and that needs to be by 2 or more bedrooms to go on that list. So, we don't talk about this very often, but it is important to be aware of the number of overhoused units, the size of those units, and how long they've been on this transfer wait list. Ask any tenant, and they will tell you everyone knows someone who is overhoused, and they're often overhoused for years. The overhoused category is challenging for all social housing providers, as it allows tenants to remain in the overhoused unit. Well, it may take years before a vacancy becomes available at their preferred location. So I understand the city will be looking at some changes to this next year, and that's really good news for housing providers, because something has to give in order to get these tenants right-sized sooner so that families on the wait list can get a unit with multiple bedrooms. So once the city, verifies what those changes are in the overhoused category, it's important that they are broadly communicated, and most specifically with the tenants who will be directly affected by those new requirements. So several years ago, Joy Connolly, who was a renowned housing consultant, did report in an article on unit swaps where tenants would be responsible for organizing their own moves. So what a concept. I believe my colleague Miguel touched on this. To do this would save landlords 1/3 of the cost of a regular transfer, as the tenants would have to agree to swap units as is. Our tenants were ecstatic, of course. Now, in 2004, it's sometimes good to go back to go forward. The UK Circle Housing, who has 61,000 units, saw tenants languishing on their wait list as well. They created an online housing exchange where tenants could contact other tenants looking for a different unit. It was a 3-step process. Once you find your match, you get your landlord's approval. And 80% of the tenants found their match in 6 months, with many moving within 6 weeks of registering. And in 2012, Toronto Community Housing had 11,000 tenants sitting on the internal transfer wait list, and about 1,600 were transferred in the prior year. And at that time, this is 10 years ago, it could take 7 years to actually move people on the wait list. And the whole time, additional tenants are being added to that list. So based on the success of the unit swaps and the significant cost reduction, the UK government requires all social housing landlords to participate in a nationwide home swap system. So I don't think the City of Toronto, as service manager, is quite there yet, but it is good to be aware of what other social housing providers have done to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any directors have questions or comments? Any other deputants on 8E, Dara?
No.
Can I just say that I think that's a wonderful idea. Thank you for sharing that. And, the dream, I guess, would be if we could do that across the province, because I have met people in our communities that would love to be able to live in Barrie or Simcoe County, and being able to match across systems would be a wonderful goal to work towards. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, 8E. Anyone want to, any comments on the agenda item from any board member?
I just want to flag that at Tenant Services Committee, I believe in relation to this item, there was a request that we invite staff from the city, from the Housing Secretariat, to attend the board meeting where this matter was discussed. And I see Jen St. Louis has joined from the city, and is on part of the meeting.
Great. Well, thank you for attending. John,
No, I think, sorry.
anything, any other member? Well, Jen just heard the great idea about sending residents of the city to other municipalities. And we get some in return, though. All right, can I get a motion to receive 8E? John, seconded by Mohammed. All in favor? Thank you, Jen. Your mere appearance gave us confidence, so thank you.
See you all. Thanks.
All right. The next one we had, I think, was
We have 3 deputants in relation to item 9. The first deputant is Ms. Birch. Kathy, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi, Kathy.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
All right, so great. Thank you once again, and this is the last time you'll hear me today, I promise. So on page 2 of 4, on the 3rd paragraph, it talks to the equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy. As somebody who's been part of deputing through multiple administrations and multiple boards, I need this board to be very aware that usually right behind a strategy comes a policy, and this part only applies to our workforce. And I want the board to make sure that if a policy gets developed, it's not until after the tenant survey for equity, diversity, inclusion, so that it's a wholesome policy when it comes through. I don't want one policy for staff and a separate policy for tenants. That doesn't work, because when you're talking about inclusion and diversity and equity, we're all human beings, and it's all under the Human Rights Code, and it all applies. So while I understand what they're trying to achieve here, the practice in many instances in the past, over the last 15 years of my experience, has that a policy would be developed. I want to make sure that a survey with tenants goes through before any policy gets developed. And that's it, other than Merry Christmas.
okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay.
So, sorry, just I'm still quite new, but with this policy of inclusion, I noticed earlier on we talked about decreasing the budget on translation, which in our multicultural city is probably very important to be inclusive. So I don't know how we can connect those two pieces.
So can I address that?
Sure. Or I don't know. I can't give you permission.
It's probably more a question for the management, I think.
I got the answer.
Who in management can address that?
To the chair, I can address that. Oh, Jack, go ahead.
No, after you, Paula.
So it's a very valid point, Councillor Tang. We are looking in terms of, we translate currently in the top 18 languages for our tenants across all major publications. So when we were looking at a reduction, it was what of those actual publications do we maybe not need to do that for every time? Can we have it on demand for tenants, as opposed to not addressing the need of translation overall from an inclusivity perspective? So your point is very well taken, and it would not be meant in any way just to compromise our commitment to inclusion to all our tenants as it relates to the language requirements that they need in terms of understanding the information that we share.
Thank you. I have found, just from personal experience, sometimes, just including a QR code to the translated material, so you don't need to print everything, but making sure it's still easily and clearly available is important.
Through the chair, absolutely agree. And we're actually moving as an organization to more innovative ways, as you suggest, of being able to make that information available in a way that doesn't require the cost of print, which, as you know, is quite prohibitive. So that's a great suggestion and one that we're actually pursuing. So thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. We
The
have more deputants on this.
we do. The next deputant is Zamani Ra. Ms. Ra, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You've got 5 minutes for your deputation. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. Greetings. I'm standing. I stand here as one, but I come as 10,000 more. Greetings, everyone. My name is Zamani Ra, and I am many things, but today I am a TCHC resident who has experienced oppression, marginalization, and doing my best to navigate through living in Toronto community housing. I'm here in my capacity as a tenant, a building representative, and a member on the Tenant Staff Oversight Advisory Board. CABR and the Center were part of the strategic priorities around equity, diversity, and inclusion, and that's why I'm speaking to item number 9 today. So this deputation is about amazing things. I find it amazing that only a year, 9 months, and 12 days ago, I was here making a deputation expressing my excitement and joy to everyone who was involved with the work of the then CABR strategy. It's also amazing that during my deputation on February 26, 2021, I advised you that, quote, to do CABR work of collecting, evaluating, and presenting data while living in our skin is by itself a full-time job on top of the ones that they may also have, like director, manager, partner, parent, daughter, or caregiver of some kind to family and community alike. To be both the subject and the object of what you are gathering proof to resolve can be an incredibly taxing thing and can take an enormous toll on all aspects of your wellness if you're not careful. It's amazing that I also said, quote, this is the part of the journey where we, the people, pause. We pause to see what TCHC, ELT, and the board will do, because the adoption of the strategy is where the heavier lifting actually begins as we continue our navigation towards equitable outcomes, because, make no mistake, we will always be pushing for justice and to claim our right to be and to thrive exactly where we stand. That was then. Recently, I've heard members of the ELT say that they're committed to doing anti-racism, anti-Black racism, and anti-oppression work. Yet in 1 year, the director of the Center for the Interest of Black People has left. What happened? When did something change that led to the voluntary departure of that director? How did we get here from the esteemed leader to this moment? Has the center's mandate changed? Has the solution came directly from us as we experience the reality of anti-Black racism at TCHC, end quote. That means the resolutions coordinator, the human rights and diversity specialist, as well as the trainers are a deliberate component of how the center functions. And how come we as a community, as community residents, tenants, and oversight committee had no say in the matter? It's amazing that you say we are building and doing work, but it feels like things are falling apart. How do we shift this? By moving at the speed of trust and integrity. Integrity is a critical part of building trust. To the ELT and the board, how can we have effective leadership if we do not trust you? In order to experience, express, and demonstrate that you are an organization with integrity, what you think, say, feel, and do must all be in organizational alignment. Only then will you have the strength and fortitude that is not only required, but difficult to break, diminish, or deny. Swansea gave us a physical manifestation of what is happening at TCHC at the moment and has been for a long time. The structure could no longer stand because the integrity of the structure was severely compromised. This mismatch of thought, word, feeling, and deed are the makings of a breach. And when there is a breach in your integrity, there is a much higher likelihood that you are prone to do something, say something, dishonor commitments, and cause due harm to someone or something, which ultimately diminishes your sense of value and undermines our trust in your ability to lead. When you let it sit at that level, be willing to make room for people to be upset with you for not being willing to act without integrity. The last thing I'll share is a story. I was getting on the bus during rush hour on a very hot day with my nephews. One was in my arms. As I dropped my fare, all of a sudden, my nephew starts screaming and kicking, bending backwards. I almost dropped him. I didn't have a clue what was happening. Someone takes pity on me. I finally sit down, and moments after we sit down, he let me know that he did not get an opportunity to show the bus driver his transfer, and that's why the episode took place. So I said to him, well, if I knew that piece of information, we could have avoided all of this. So I learned an important lesson that day. It taught me about the importance of being on the same page of understanding. That lesson took place 22 years ago. It has also taught me that information provides clarity, which is key, particularly when you are speaking from lived experience. If you and I are not on the same level of clarity and understanding as much as humanly possible about a situation, then it is unjust for you to decide the fate of that situation without consultation. Otherwise, with power in the stroke of a pen, keystroke, or verbal directive, you will have demonstrated again that you are continuously going to act without integrity. It's almost done. It didn't work for us then,
You're
and it does
past
not
your
work for us
5
now.
minutes. Sorry.
We're good. That's it. It
You're
just didn't
good?
work then.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any director have questions or comments? No, thank you so much for your delegation. Appreciate it. We have another one on this one, Dara.
We do. Anisha Stewart wanted to depute in relation to this matter. Ms. Stewart, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm just waiting patiently.
Okay, we're ready whenever you are. You have 5 minutes. You can start when you're ready.
Okay. I would just like to say greetings to you all. I would first like to give thanks to my ancestors for empowering me with strength, confidence, willpower, and love that makes it possible for me to do this work. My name is Anisha Stewart, and I am a resident leader, community advocate, and a member of the Tenant Staff Advisory Board. It has come to our attention of the Oversight Committee that structural changes are being considered, including backtracking the elements of the CABR strategy that deal with tenant engagement and complaint resolutions. As you know, the strategy was created as a result of rigorous consultations with over 600 Black staff and tenants. Every word in the strategy was carefully considered and deliberately placed there to achieve a purpose. To learn that the strategy is being diminished to focus only on policy recommendations, and to learn that the resolutions unit at the Center for Advancing the Interests of Black People has been suspended or put on hold is troubling. And more troubling is the fact that these decisions that impact us, Black residents, more than anyone else at TCHC are being single-handedly made without any consultation or due process in which the community is engaged in a meaningful way. We were consulted in the beginning. We need to be consulted in this transitional moment. And we need to be consulted moving forward in every step of the way. Every part of the center's operation was a deliberate addition established based solely on the experiences, ideas, and requests brought forward by residents, staff, and community who participated in the consultations. It is time for an assessment. We tenants and members of the Oversight Advisory Board want an independent inquiry into the conditions that led us to where we are today. We, the Oversight Board, insist on working with an independent organization to finalize the scope of the review for We would like to finalize the scope of the review independent of TCHC. We want to know things like how many cases were brought before the center, what were the outcomes, and how, if any, did they contribute to systems and policy change at TCHC. The first step towards changing this is to cooperate with an external body and conduct an inquiry into the conditions that led to the resignation of the director for the Center for Advancing the Interests of Black People. We seek clarity on understanding what was done or not done by the ELTs to help or hinder the center objectives, and how that has contributed to the current situation, so that we can ensure to make provisions for the next person coming in to fill that role in the same way envisioned by community and outlined in the strategy. We are also concerned about what the center staff are experiencing as certain staff members are seemingly being targeted as a result of doing their jobs in confronting anti-Black racism. This situation brings back the shameful events that took place within TCHC following the Neptune 4 incident. The optics for this situation is very concerning to tenants and community leaders. We would like to see the board conduct an independent inquiry into these circumstances. In closing, I would like to share some findings from a consultancy firm, Russell Reynolds Associates. People doing EDI work are leaving their roles due to being unsupported, while others feel driven out by a corporate culture that is tokenizing them and offering little more than lip service to EDI efforts. According to Tommy Elizabeth Sojourner Campbell, who runs a consulting firm specializing in anti-racism work.
Are you
According
almost
to
complete?
numerous
Because
reports,
we're out of time. So
yes, just a few more sentences. According to numerous reports,
we only got sorry, we're out of time. Can you wrap up in a couple of words?
Okay, well, definitely Google Human Rights Commission drove out its first Black female president, and thank you all for listening. Looking forward to your next steps.
Thank you very much. Any director have comments or questions? John?
Yes. Could you, are you a resident? Are you a THC tenant? Hello?
She may have hung up. Did she hang up there?
I can't tell.
Okay.
Stuart, can you hear us?
It lists her as a tenant on the.
Yeah, I think she said she was actually.
I believe she did.
Yeah, I had another question, but it was in regard to what she'd like to see, and she was talking about staff being targeted. I don't know. She's not there though. She's left.
Yes, I am a resident
you are.
and a member of the advisory board.
Right. Yeah. And so you mentioned that you felt that the staff in the Caber group was being targeted somehow. How do you know that, and what have you heard?
The resolutions work has been put on hold. That is a major aspect of the center responsibilities. If there are no resolutions being done, how can any change be made in the policies that are currently affecting anti-Black racism within TCHC?
Right. Okay. But you said that staff were being targeted. That's different, I think.
Resolution staff work are being put on hold. No other staff work are being put on hold.
Okay.
I said seemingly. I don't have 100% proof. That's for you guys to do an inquiry and find the proof or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. So that is so number 9. We're now ready to go.
That's the last deputant.
Okay. So why don't we deal with this on a questions basis, unless there's something in particular you want to highlight. I got some, John and Adele.
So Jag, maybe you could just touch on some of the things that she said there and discuss a little bit about the CABR. There was a change at the top. Was that expected? Was it unexpected? Do we know why it occurred? How are the staff doing there? I know that we have many other priorities other than this, but nonetheless, it was a priority of TCHC, and maybe you could just speak to that a little bit.
Certainly. So certainly won't speak to the individual from a human resources perspective, but it was unexpected as far as the resignation. And from an executive leadership team perspective, we regrouped immediately. We identified what I'll call our best and our brightest. We pulled out of operations Barry Thomas. Barry has more than 30 years of experience. He led, he was the executive director in the past for both the North York Committee on Community and Race Ethnic Relations, as well as the Canadian Centre for Police Race Relations. And so we pulled him out of the operations because of the importance not only of CABR, but our commitment to do so. And and he was put in place of as Ms. Impanza had left the organization. And as far as the center and the team, our first priority is, one, our continued commitment to the CABR strategy, and number two, certainly the CABR team that is there as part of the corporation.
Okay, thank you.
And I had Adele next.
No, I had another point. I was hoping if the deputations were finished, I could just.
They are. Yeah, we're into strategic priorities now. We're into
I'll wait till I'll wait till you vote to receive number 9, and then I'll ask my question.
We're kind of at that point now.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, yeah. So go ahead, Adele. Ask away.
Favor. I just wanted to go back to the BIFAC report, and I didn't have a report per se, but I did want to ask Nick to recognize the retirement of Martin Wilshick. He joined the IAC over 20 years ago when he was in the position of City of Toronto's manager of Treasury and Finance. And he has decided to leave the committee. And I just think in the public session, someone who has served TCHC for such a long period of time deserves recognition. And I was hoping Nick, as chair of IAC, could do that for us.
Thank you.
I know you're finished your lunch, Nick. I was watching you eat.
I was waiting for someone to make a comment about that. No, thank you, Adele, and thanks for also using most of my material as well. But no, anyone that served this long to Toronto Community Housing, and the Investment Advisory Committee is a small committee tasked with oversight of several $100 million of investment funds, and Martin played an integral role on that committee, and so just want to publicly acknowledge our thanks and appreciation for many years of service and bringing a really sound and thoughtful approach to that committee. So thank you, Martin, for your years of service.
You're here. Okay. Anything else on number 9? Okay. I think you moved. Brian is a seconder. Dell, all in favor? Seat. Thanks. Passed. Next item we held was 11, was it?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have any deputants?
Nope. No. Chair Emery had asked that the matter be held.
Oh, yes, correct. Sorry.
I had questions about the 30% increase, and I just wanted to understand what support we had to justify it. We've got, significant budget constraints, and I was interested to know if the city had been experiencing similar. I know that was mentioned in the report, but there was no substantive information as to what the city had done to address vendor requests for increases in the middle of a contract. So if someone could speak to the support and what due diligence has been done on this, I'd really appreciate it.
So through you, Chair Murphy, the first part of your question in terms of the due diligence, I'll ask Senior Director Richard Grosch to speak to. In terms of our conversations that we've had with the city's procurement department, I will ask Senior Director of Procurement to speak to that, Albert Koch.
Good afternoon, and through the chair, we have done a fair bit of due diligence and investigating around the price increases. Not only have we engaged all of the approximately 15 vendors that are on our list providing demand general repair and move out services, but we've also engaged vendors and suppliers outside of the contracts. We've also done some engagement with other housing providers, confirmed that they're seeing similar increases throughout their contracts, of which they are also affirming. And we've also reached out to some of the different suppliers, whether it be flooring, tiling, or otherwise, to verify the actual product increases. I'll pass it off to Mr. Koch to speak to
Sorry,
procurement.
Richard, can I just ask a question? Are there alternatives that can be selected? Like when you're checking materials, instead of using one product, could we use another product that may be less expensive? And are you actually seeing 30% increases when you say you've checked?
Yeah, we are seeing 30%, and in some scenarios even higher. So a prime example would be things like parquet flooring, where you're seeing significant elevated costs. If you can get your hands on the inventory to do that. To answer your first question, as we are investigating alternative finishes, prime example would be laminate flooring, 3mm or larger laminate flooring as a replacement to parquet or other products. There are some cost savings, but there's some upfront costs that would be cost prohibitive.
Cost prohibitive to change product?
To make the changes on those, especially in scenarios where we are maybe providing a repair. So when you get into laminate flooring, sometimes it's a complete replace versus a patchwork repair. So we are still doing those investigations, and we're prepared to change products if it's cost effective to do so.
And the charts that you provided links to, there certainly was very large spikes earlier in the year, but then they seem to be leveling off.
That's correct. And through the chair, that is why we're asking for a continuation of the 30%. We're not asking to increase from previous, but we are seeing it level off at this time, which provides us confidence that we wouldn't have to seek the approval of it above the 30% at this time.
It seemed like the charts, they started at one point, they went up significantly at the beginning of the year, and then they came down and were leveling off. And that's why I'm questioning whether it's needed that it be as high as 30%.
Through our investigations, it continues to be at the 30% line. We will continue to monitor on a regular basis, and we're prepared to work with the suppliers, the vendors, and this board to reduce sooner than anticipated if we can.
I think it's very hard to go back to vendors and say, we'd like to reduce the prices now.
I will work on that with our procurement department around how we propose that, but understood.
Anyone?
So I did want to hear about what the city is doing, and if they are experiencing the same kind of requests, and if they're granting the 30% increases, or if they're negotiating the increases, or what's being done.
So, Director Emery, it's Albert Koch. So, as Nadia said, I'm the Senior Director of Procurement. I cannot speak to specifically a general repairs program. The city doesn't really have a general repair program similar to what we have. Ours are somewhat unique in the fact that we have so many multi-residential buildings with constant sort of repair needs in the moment, so demand maintenance repair needs. What I can speak to is that the city and other city agencies in the city, there's a group called the Cooperative Procurement Group, which the city convenes periodically, and it involves, the city and other agencies besides yourself. TTC, Toronto Police comes, Toronto Zoo, Toronto Library, TDSB comes. all of the agencies, so particularly our most recent meeting in November, this was a very sort of active conversation for a good part of the meeting. All of the agencies are receiving these kinds of requests for different sort of programs and projects that they have. What's interesting, or not interesting, is, I mean, everybody's taking them quite seriously, the understanding that there are some, there's been a dramatic rise in inflation, much of it beyond vendor controlled, and especially in particular categories, as we're seeing in the general repair programs and particular products. Similar to ourselves, I think a theme that came out of that meeting is there's a lot of due diligence being done. So yeah, there are negotiations. They're asking for the same kind of documentation that we're asking for. A lot of vetting is happening on those. Questions are, can the vendor absorb the requests themselves, do we think, or at least absorb part of it? Of course, we're asking what's the impact on a budget, because obviously, we're all familiar with that here, what that would mean. And of course, there's always the question is, what's the impact on the project or the program? If we were not to grant an increase, would it fail, and what's the impact on, in our case, let's say TCHC, if it were to fail? Certainly, there would be a big impact for the programs that are before you today. Similarly, and I'll be quick with this, two of my managers went to the Ontario Public Buyers Association conference recently. So again, that's a representative of public entities. One of the workshops there was specifically on this topic. And then similarly, again, there was a very engaged conversation, as they reported back to me, from a number of agencies. They're all getting these requests. They're taking them seriously. And similar to the cooperative procurement group, which the city convenes, there were a number of examples given where the requests are being granted. I hope that helps.
It's a very general response. Yeah. So that's very difficult to assess. But I do think that when TCHC has serious budgetary concerns, and this $20 million is significant, and we are making cuts in other areas, and so I would have liked to think that you had negotiated with these vendors and made whatever changes could have been made, to reduce this. And I still haven't heard what other city agencies or corporations or the city itself. And I know that the programs are different, but I imagine that they're also getting vendor requests. Anyway, as long as you can confirm that you have done everything you can to negotiate these, because it's, I think we've got to all share the pain here. And 30% is significant, and we're making serious cuts.
Can I add
programs
something
and tenant service?
Sorry, can I add to what you're saying, Adele? I wonder if there are non-urgent projects that could be slowed down or paused until, if we are perceiving there could be some price correction in the new year, instead of just, I guess, fixing ourselves to a 30% increase across the board, especially since I think, interest rates are predicted to stabilize, and we don't know what the new year will hold. So, and as Adele pointed out, chances are once you go up 30%, it's hard to go back down. And so is there an opportunity to do that?
So through you, Chair Murphy, and I'll throw it over to Richard to expand on this. Councillor Cheng, I think there is an opportunity for us to look at non-urgent repairs. In this particular case, this implicates our move-out program, so turning units over so we can get folks off the waiting list. So that's a priority. Secondly, it's our demand general maintenance. So this is us coming from tenants to respond to emerging urgent issues, and so we have to do that. And I think the third area is responding to unit fires or other emergency conditions in units, and so those are items that are harder to put off. So Richard, I don't know if you have anything to add, or Dara specifically around the emergency response piece.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you've described it well.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, motion to receive number 11.
Sorry, I think actually number 11 is a motion to approve.
Oh, okay, motion to approve. Apologies. Mover? Anyone? Ryan, seconder? Seconder? No seconder? Oh, Marcel? All in favor? Carried. Okay,
Mr. Chair, that concludes the matters on the public agenda for today's meeting.
yeah. Do we have anything, we have a few items left in the in-camera?
So a motion to return to the in-camera session,
Yeah.
if that's the board's intent. I've prepared a motion that I can
All
just
right.
put up quickly.
That's okay, yeah.
Got it. So if that's, if
All in favor, moved?